Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I really appreciate it. My name is Chris Farrell. I'm a .NET leader, and I currently run the .NET practice at Quick Solutions. So this is kind of a fun talk that I just kind of came up with. I wasn't looking to come up with a talk. It just kind of happened to me, and we'll go through that a little bit. So just real quick, a survey of the audience, if you guys are willing to raise your hands for me. How many people have used the cloud at all? Oh, lots of people. Good. How many people currently have cloud credits? Quite a few. How many people are using them? Anything fun? No. Wow. Okay. Not one hand there. That was pretty impressive. Okay. So some things I hope you take away from this talk is it looks like everyone already has a lot of credits. There's probably some credits you don't know about that you could be using, and then you already have some, and hopefully we can find some fun ways to use those. Just some free resources and some ways that, most of those credits are use it or lose it. Once they expire, they're worth nothing, so that's kind of a fun way to do that. And then the obligatory disclaimer for any cloud talk is the cloud changes daily, sometimes every minute. This is a slide I stole from Microsoft of just showing what's new in Azure in the last 12 months. And every time I do a cloud talk, Microsoft likes to release a change that breaks half my talk, like the day before. So it's constantly evolving, constantly changing. That's what makes it fun. But if anything becomes out of date or something new comes along, I'm sorry if I missed it or didn't correct it. So obviously a very fun title for this presentation. But we're going to go through what I really mean by abuse. So first of all, I'll give you some ideas. Might save you some money. I thought I'd get some applause there. Jeez. Might find some ideas that help you save the planet, possibly. But first, just some disclaimers. When I say abuse, there's some things you definitely shouldn't do, and this is common sense, but just got to tell you just so that you don't say that guy said it was okay and blame me. Don't do anything stupid at work that's going to get you fired. So, for example, don't do something that violates a non-compete or breaks the terms of service or breaks the law or anything like that. You got to be careful because some of these ideas are, don't break the law, obviously. People do this. I don't know why I have to even say it, but. And then the biggest thing is if you do find something to use these credits for, like I can see that there's probably an IT manager in this room right now who's going to say, hey, I'm going to take all my employees' Azure credits and start hosting customer stuff with them. And then that employee leaves and your stuff's all going to break. So make sure it's anything that you're putting on here is easily replaceable, that you can move it somewhere else, that you can live without it. You don't want it to be mission critical. So that if you have your stuff tied to your Azure credits and you decide to switch jobs and you lose your MSDN account, that you're not breaking and fixing 25 things. So, but where this idea came from, like I said, it just kind of happened to me. Is everybody aware of CodeMash? Yep. So I was at CodeMash a couple years ago going through Andrew Gillen's security talks. That guy is fascinating if you ever get a chance to watch him. He actually works for an unknown government security agency and does security talks there. And he basically scared the bejesus out of me, so now I run a VPN everywhere. So I was there and I was getting my renewal notice for CodeMash that, hey, you get a $55 bill for your annual VPN service. Meanwhile, I was prepping a talk I was doing on a different Azure-related talk, and I kept staring at this guy right here, saying, hey, you have $100 of unused credits pretty much this month. And I found myself thinking, like, hey, all these different things, if I just had a server with a ton of bandwidth and resources somewhere, I could host a lot of the stuff myself. It's so easy. I thought about upgrading my home server, but I just didn't have the bandwidth. And it's like, wait a second, I've got, all these credits. What if I could be just hosting some of my own stuff there? So the idea was born. So what I use my credits on, I already told you the one is a VPN server. Is anybody in the room use a VPN service? Not very many. Hopefully I can scare you a little bit and help you change that, but you really should. You should definitely on public Wi-Fi everywhere. That's common sense for personal use on your phone, even at home. Most people are surprised by that, but yes, even at home, and there's a lot of good reasons. So first of all, you guys have all heard of net neutrality. And even though there's legislation that's going both ways on this, it's going to happen. You'll actually see there's a lot of people, even with adding the encryption overhead of a VPN, you'll get better speeds on Netflix sometimes because somebody's throttling it. So there's actually a lot of software out there where you can just set your home VPN, your home router to directly always be connected to a VPN somewhere, and that will let you oftentimes get a lot better speed for YouTube or Netflix. I can see Bach probably already has this set up. Just another use, privacy. I care about privacy tremendously. In technology, you get convenience, but you also become tracked very easily. Your ISP keeps logs of everything you do, and it's only a matter of time before they decided those are profitable and start profiling you and selling your information. Or you start getting targeted ads, which I know I've seen sometimes where I type something in, and next thing you know, I'm getting advertisements for it. By going through a VPN, you get a lot more anonymity. So basically, you're coming out of Azure's data center. They really don't know who you are. Without that, they know exactly who your ISP is, basically your geolocation, and they can identify you because you keep coming back to the same IP. They may not know who you are, but they know some stuff about you. And then corporate firewalls. We all work in IT as developers. Anybody worked with a corporate firewall that blocks like Google or Stack Overflow or, you know, something very, very useful that you really should have, and you have to go talk to the network administrator and say, pretty please, can I have access to MSDN so I can actually look up how to do some of this stuff? And 6 weeks of paperwork later, you get one site approved, and then you find the next site. And a lot of times this is easier just to get the VPN approved, and then you don't need to worry about their rules because they can't see anything. It's just coming right through. So I actually use a VPN at work, although word of warning, Azure will think you're getting attacked. We actually had some stuff saying, hey, why are you coming from New York? And it was me on a VPN because they were expecting it from Ohio. So just some of your accounts you may occasionally get notices about that. So setting up your VPN, all you do is set up a VM, and there's a lot of instructions. This talk's not about how to set up VPNs or how to set up all these services. You can hopefully Google your way most of the way there. I'll just give you some links. But Windows Terminal Services, most people probably use that as the built-in VPN for Windows Server. So it shows opening which ports you open up, and there's some setup instructions. And then, as with many Microsoft products, the error codes are absolutely cryptic. So there's a pretty good URL of troubleshooting that this code 5496, some hex code, whatever, means this. I actually find that this is really painful to set up, though. So I'm still going through different options. The one I'm currently using is OpenVPN. Has anybody ever used OpenVPN? Quite a few people. I have this running on Ubuntu. It's incredibly easy to set up. You just spin up an Ubuntu VM. You can do it in whatever cloud you want. It's usually pretty easy, and almost all the clouds have that one ready to go out of the gallery. And then it's probably 10 minutes of very simple commands, and you're done, and you're up and running. So what I'm using now, I don't really love it because the client on the client side is not very flexible or robust. It's very, very simple. I'm still looking for a better option, but that's what I'm using right now. So after doing those, I started asking myself, okay, those, what else could I be hosting for myself? And just started thinking like, hey, I got these credits. How could I use them? What could I get value out of? So I got an email for offsite backup. Does anybody back up their stuff offsite? Personal stuff. So just backing stuff up is a good idea. I mean, I don't like losing my stuff at all. If you already have backups, it never hurts to have an additional backup because backups sometimes fail. You do have a tape and it's been backing up, and you don't realize that the job wasn't running or it's backing up an old file. And redundancy is always a good thing in anything like this. So just a little tip though, you do have to do the backups before the failure or else it doesn't usually work. Tends to be what some people do wrong. But I actually back up my work computer and I back up several of my personal machines, and that's kind of where the abuse is. I'm using my crap, my boss is in the stock. I'm using my work account to back up my home server, but it's that or it was going to waste. And if you're worried about privacy, the one I'm actually using, Azure has recovery services, if nobody's used that one. It came along about a year ago. Almost nobody's aware of it, but it's incredibly easy to use. I think I was up and running in about 10 minutes. I'm very, very happy with this. So you can use it for your cloud VMs if you have something you want to back up there, or you can back up your local machines on-prem to the cloud. And basically, it has all the features you look for in cloud backup. So it does block level, so that if you change a 50 megabyte file, it'll only send the deltas. It doesn't send the whole 50 megabyte file. It's all encrypted locally and then transmitted to the cloud. So nothing in the cloud you have complete privacy and complete security there. Your boss can't go in and look at your stuff in your containers or anything like that. It's completely encrypted with, I believe, AES encryption. Which is nice because that means Microsoft can't snoop on you either, because the problem with a lot of cloud platforms, you have encryption, but they can still peek on you. So allegedly that doesn't happen here. And then we'll go through the software and everything on this, but it also does integrity checking to retransmit if needed. It's basically a really nice professional thing. Setting up's really easy, but there's a tutorial there. These slides will be available online for you guys. But basically, you just go into your Azure portal. If nobody's ever seen the Azure portal, this is what it looks like. And on the bottom left, you'll see there's a little new button, which I chopped off on my screenshot, just to add a little mystery to the presentation. But you just go to Recovery Services, Backup Vault, Create Vault, choose your region, and type in a name. So then you'll get a page that looks like this. And the most important part here is download Vault credentials. You'll download a file that's just really small. And then the other thing is you download a local agent. And basically, if you don't know what Server Essentials is, you want the top one. Most people don't know what Server Essentials is. For your Windows, you can back up your Windows 7 systems. I don't know if XP is supported, although that might be a good project to upgrade that first before you do anything else. But I know I'm backing up Windows 7. I'm backing up Windows Server 2011 and 2012, so it works just fine for all those. I believe it also supports Linux, although I haven't tried it because all my Linux instances are already in the cloud, and they're just disposable that I rebuild if I need. But you basically just click that, and you go through the classic Windows installer, next, finish. You're done. And you'll get an agent that looks like this on your system. How blurry that is, I didn't want to bet on having internet connection here. But it looks just like every other job in Windows. You see it's transferring 60-something gigabytes of data. And it just runs. So it actually has very configurable retention policies. You can do however many times a day, however many times a week. It'll keep your retention for you. Pricing-wise, if you care, they're free credits, but you pay per machine and then per storage. But it's very affordable. And so if anybody's paying $60 a month for Carbonite or paying for whatever else, or not $60 a month, $60 a year, maybe you could be saving yourself some money. So on the control panel, it shows you there's no way, because it's encrypted at your source. It's unlike some backup tools, you can't go into a web portal and actually say like, hey, let me see my files that I've uploaded to my cloud backup. That's not possible. So the only thing it shows you is how many computers you have backing up, how much space you're using. But it is really nice to use. Has anybody in the room used Carbonite backup, Crash Plan? So some of those things have an option for backing up to a friend. So if you could find a friend who has enough bandwidth, and you can give them a hard drive, and if they leave their server on and all that stuff, you can actually back up your files to one of your friends across town versus sending it to a data center and paying for storage. I don't know if nobody's tried that, I guess. The obvious challenge there is you got to find a friend who has a huge amount of bandwidth. Because if you want to send them 100 gigs, they've got to have enough, to get that out there. But you also got to rely on them leaving their computer on for you. And you have to work out all the other issues. So what if you just had a friend who, would leave his computer on all the time, who had the bandwidth of, say, a major cloud provider, who had unlimited storage space that you can configure as needed, who, was completely reliable and dependable, So I actually tried doing this, and I set up Crash Plan with the backup to a friend where my VM in the cloud was just my friend, and set up an extra small and just put a ton of storage on it and said, hey, go. So this is just an idea. Again, offsite backup. I have a lot of family photos. I'm an amateur photographer, not very good, but I like doing it. So I have tons and tons and tons of pictures, and those are the things I don't want to lose. I mean, I can reinstall programs, but I can re-download music or buy it again. But pictures and stuff like that, personal files, anything that's not work-related is probably not in source control. I really like to have that backup, because if you've ever lost it, it sucks. So I thought, like, hey, okay, what else could I do? I got a bill for my website. Anybody pay for web hosting in here? I was paying about $5 a month for Discount ASP. Again, not a lot of money, but it's like, why am I paying for web hosting? You know, I've got a free Azure credit. So there's a lot of different options. Azure Websites is a new feature as of I think about a year ago. It's hard to keep track of when Azure released things because they keep renaming them and they keep coming up with new stuff every day. But Azure Websites are actually really nice and flexible. They're very good for this kind of use. I just hit a button. I hope it didn't do anything. But it actually supports a lot of its programming technology. It used to be the free websites were very crippled. These will support .NET, Java, all that stuff. So I'm in the process of moving my personal website, which I'm paying for hosting, over to an Azure website. And there's a lot of options, even with the free ones, or you can use a better one if you want, if you have the credits. But something really important to document on this is it works a lot differently than your typical website hosted on a hosting provider somewhere, where you go to the control panel and you can just see files on a file system and all that different stuff. I mean, it's very much, the Azure portal doesn't give you a lot of access to your site. It just gives you diagnostics and performance counts. So to get to that, if nobody's ever used it, this link here, if you plan on using it, this just made it worth your while, is there's a tool called Duel. So basically just this very simple blog, but you basically just put Kudu at the end of the URL, and it'll give you a whole bunch of information about your actual site. So far, between backup and VPN and web hosting, saving about 170 bucks. Thanks, boss. So obviously those are things like if my personal blog goes down, and I know it's a tragedy since I haven't updated it in 2 years, but I know, but there's probably a lot of other people in this room who have a blog they haven't updated in 2 years. So I mean, if it goes down, not a big deal. You know, if I don't have VPN, there's other ones you can use. There's TunnelBear as a free one, it gives you 500 megs a month. And you know, if you're just gonna need it one day a month, maybe use that instead. But I definitely say still use a VPN. And then, you know, backup. It's an additional backup. I have on-site backups that my home server does automatically for me, and then the home server itself backs up remotely. So, worst case scenario, if that backup option goes away, I just sign up for another one and redo the backup. So again, it meets all those criteria I gave you. What else would you do if it was free? So here's a couple more things I'm doing. And again, something I just want to throw out there is I'm not trying to use all of my credits just irresponsibly. You know, I'm not trying to use the full $100 every month just to say I'm using it. I'm trying to start a little bit small and then build up, because otherwise you just spend it all and then you're stuck. But whenever I need to for personal projects, got a Jenkins box running just for personal use. And that's technically not outside of the box of what you're supposed to use Azure for in the first place. But if you want to run your own CI server, just spin up a VM, and when you're not using it, you turn it off. And it's really nice to have that on a personal project sometimes, because if you're like me, you forget how to deploy your own website. So automating that's good. As I mentioned, I am also a photographer. Not very good one, but in the gallery, there's an app. If anybody use Flickr? So if you're a photographer, you want a lot more than what some of the sites offer. You know, like OneDrive offers a great photo gallery, but they limit you on space. They give you 25 gig, and if you're taking pictures with a real camera, you're going to use that in a couple days. So there's actually an open source project, just like there's a million open source CMSs. Well, it turns out there's an open source gallery. It's already in the app gallery. It actually does have commercial licenses, but if you just say you're using it for personal use, it is free. Otherwise, it's like 500 bucks. But you go through on the GNU license, and it'll mail you a key, and it's unlocked. So you get the full features of a very nice product that's very well documented with, I think it's got a 600-page user manual that you hopefully don't have to read, because that's a lot of reading. So for anybody who's a photographer, oh geez, can anybody read that, or is that all blurry? So basically, it shows you your ISO, your aperture, your aperture/f stops, what all your camera settings were. It gives you the high res, the low res, all that different stuff. So if you're a photographer or anything like this, I mean, here was just a site. It's in the app gallery. It took me about 12 minutes to set this up. So literally just go to the gallery, say start. 10 minutes later, you've got a website. You Google on how to actually start it up and figure out how to use it. And it's got a nice multi-uploader, which is really nice. You can just drag files on there, say upload, and it'll sit there and just run. So just as a test, I uploaded, I think about 800 megs of pictures just in the background, just to see, like, is it going to have the typical image upload things of timeout or limitations on size or any of that stuff, and it just worked. That being said, if you do this on a free Azure website, I do believe you're limited to a 1 gigabyte. So, but it's an option. Or you can set it up. There's actually an installer you can set it up on a VM. So, just another idea. So getting into some of the more other fun stuff, these aren't things I'm doing. Well, actually, some of these things I'm doing. You just donate your CPU cycles. So if you don't have a use for you, use it for somebody else. Anybody heard of World Community Grid? So IBM finally did something useful and created this solution. Sorry, I'm a Microsoft guy. So if you use this link, I get credits, which I don't think are any good for me other than bragging rights. Or you can just sign up on your own. I'd rather you at least do it, even if you don't use my link. But you can see this is what the control panel looks like. And there's a whole list of projects we'll get into later, and then a bunch of machines. And basically, it's a worldwide distributed computing where you can donate your CPU cycles to all these. They've got a whole slew of projects. So you can pick which ones you're interested in, or just say, I don't care, go for it. So yeah, I've got a VM in Azure curing cancer. Well, looking for a cure for cancer. So this is one of their products, and you see my VM called Cancer Sucks. That basically I just leave running pretty much all the time. I think I've got a dual core on there, which almost got me in trouble because I had a quad core and it used too much money, and this presentation almost didn't happen because I used up all my credits this month, pretty close. But yeah, basically it's on Windows. The installer is incredibly easy. You log in, you create a quick account, install it, next, finish. Give it your username and password, and you're online. So it gives you a little tool that looks like that, and it'll show you what project it's working on and how far along the completion is. And it's really nice because you can limit, like, hey, don't use more than 100% of my CPU, don't process it if I haven't been idle for 30 minutes, do it only during these hours. It's very flexible, designed to run in your background. So I've actually got it running on a couple other machines now too. So that's in Azure. And then just for fun, I also set up one in Amazon on Ubuntu that I figured, hey, it's cheaper this way, and I'm just running it headless since it's the only thing that's running. I don't need a GUI, and I don't need the extra cost of a Windows VM versus Linux. So you can see the program's actually BOINC, which I don't know the pronunciation. It might be Boink, but you'll see the Boink process running there. World Community Grid is Boink. So basically, that's the only thing running. But funny story on this one, actually. I went to Bowling Green State University, so way back when I was in college in 2002, 2003, one of the administrators at the university bought a Silicon Graphics supercomputer mainframe. I think it was like $800,000, and the idea was he could run the entire college campus off of this one supercomputer. Unfortunately, it didn't even actually make sense to do that, and they didn't need it, so they never actually plugged it in and used it for anything useful. But they were just running one of these World Community Grid projects on there, and they were like number 3 in the world because they had like this massive supercomputer doing nothing else. And the other funny thing is the machine was about the size of a Pepsi machine, like a full-size pop vending machine. And it actually had redundant top and bottom computers, and in the middle had like this giant screen, and somebody put a sign that said insert quarter to play game, which I thought was kind of funny. But so anyway, some of the other projects that are available, all you do is install the World Community Grid application, and you'll have access to any of these you want, or you can let it shuffle through, so whatever interests you. So Milky Way at Home, they're building a 3D model of the Milky Way galaxy. So if you are a science fiction or a science guy or astronomy guy, this might be a project you choose to donate to. If you're a nerdy science guy and you like Third Rock from the Sun, the LHC project, you can donate to the Large Hadron, the LHC project. Hadron, how is it? Hadron. So, sorry about the nerdy remark, by the way. Or you could just do this so that you can impress girls at the bar by saying I'm doing the same stuff as the guys from Third Rock, But yeah, so obviously with all that stuff, they need a lot of CPU resources if you wish to donate to that. Earthquakes, there's stuff that goes for that. This one's really fun. So does anybody know what I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Enigma is? A couple people. I'm an amateur security guy as well, and I just love this stuff, and I find it interesting because it's technology and history. That was actually the cipher system that the Germans used during World War II. It was a fancy typewriter with wheels on it, they had like 10 generations of it. But some of the very first, I think 3 messages have still never been decoded. It was actually a very good encryption that's very difficult to break unless you actually got the machine and got the codes. So just for whatever fun, people are still trying to decode those original 3 messages. So if you want to contribute to that, I think that's actually pretty neat. And I don't know if you get anything if you actually happen to win, or if they would be able to say like your part of it was the tipping point. But I'd be curious to see what those messages say.
Would they be the high world?
Wow. Introduce Nazi humor into a Star Trek talk. Accomplishment unlocked. So here's the one that SCTI at home was the one Bowling Green was running. So they take radio waves from all the universe, and they try to process them for signals of intelligent life. Sometimes I wonder if we should start looking for more intelligence closer to home first, but you know, it's only because I drive in Dublin traffic every day. But so again, these all run through that same program, and there's a list of some of these projects, and there's a couple hundred, I think, actually. The big ones, I just covered like 5 or 6 of the big ones, but there's there's tons of them, and you can also make your own if you really wanted to. So we're about 15 minutes. Yeah. Just some other usages. If anybody needs a domain controller for something, or you can use ADFS, occasionally it comes in handy. This one gets a little tricky, Bitcoin mining. I need to check the terms of service to see if you can actually do that, but it'd be kind of cool to convert your boss's free credits into money in your pocket. I like that idea. If you ever have to edit a really large Photoshop file, I know my parents, kind of a sad story, my dad got fired 3 days before he got married, and back then in the 60s, weddings were like a weekend-long affair where you paid for everybody's costs to stay in hotels for the whole weekend and food, and literally they, for the reception, walked out of the reception, walked around the building into the back door and started opening envelopes to pay the catering staff and everybody else, and then a family member had to cover the difference. So they were literally broke. They never got their wedding photos. So I spent years trying to retouch these proofs that I discolored on Photoshop. So you massive, massive files, my computer's choking. If you wanted to, you could spin up like a G15. I don't think G12 is the largest instance. It's 448 gigs of RAM and 32 processors to do Photoshop and style in there, you know? Or if you want to crunch some video or whatever. Run a Minecraft server. Again, privacy. The really good way to make sure you don't leave any fingerprints on your machine is to not use your machine, just remote into an Azure VM somewhere. So don't do anything illegal, but if you truly want to look up something maybe embarrassing, you know, I don't know what that would be, but other operating systems. I love to, you know, just occasionally use Linux, but I don't want to keep my own dedicated machine around, and sometimes my VMs get broken, so I'll just spin up a new one to try something out and then burn it down. And then I'm sure Windows 10 is going to be up there very soon. If people want to try it before they install it, just another idea. So the results, that's about a week old, but I've used almost all of my $100 credit this month. And honestly, I've decided to scale it back. So I'm going to skip through some of the rest of this since we're getting a little shorter on time. But so some of the credits, what's that? I have half an hour? Oh, okay. I thought I had 15 minutes. Sorry. 11:30 is your out time. Oh, okay. Well, then we're a little bit ahead. That's fine. So some of the credits, I think everybody has some credits, but you may not be aware of all of them or all the quirks of them. So most people are on Azure, I'm assuming. Amazon? None of the above. Okay, people got tired of raising their hands. So it's actually really interesting. I talked to Microsoft at their partner night about this idea, and the cloud evangelists loved it. Even though I'm talking to people and abusing their resources, they loved it. If anybody is a stockholder, follows Microsoft stock, you'll see that Microsoft's strongly tied to the utilization of cloud credits. So with your enterprise agreement, you might have, you know, thousands of dollars of cloud credits for your enterprise that you're not even using. So you might be able to talk to your boss and say, hey, look, we have $5,000 of Azure credits this year that we're not using for anything. Why don't we donate those to cure cancer? Or why don't we donate those to all these different projects? So that's just an idea. Microsoft loves the idea because their sales reps are now partially paid upon utilization. They realize, like, hey, we're giving them all these credits, they're not using it, so now the sales reps are actually getting paid if you use it. So while these are technically gray areas, they love the idea. Was somebody about to ask a question I thought I heard? No? Okay.
I have a question, Chris. For the group for $100 a month on Windows Azure, as an example, what's a typical virtual machine as far as configuration and processors and memory that you could get?
Well, that's actually interesting. So the second point, something most people don't know about, is for MSDN you get a pretty good discount, which is the second bullet point up there. So it took me a while to realize this because I spun up these VMs like, okay, this will be about $100 a month, so I'll have to turn it off after 20 days. And I logged in after 15 days, and it's only used like $7. I'm like, what the heck? So to answer your question, I'm not sure. I can say that I've ran a quad core, which was like an A4, I believe, which is supposed to be like $300 a month for almost an entire month, and only spent 65 bucks. So it's kind of a guess and check. Right now I actually have like 10 VMs running, but they're all like A1s and A2s because I don't need a lot, and I turn them on and off as needed. It doesn't cost me any extra money to spin up a new VM, and this way it's easier. So you can run quite a bit. With Azure, those credits go quite a ways. You can run multiple machines, especially if they're small. I'm backing up, I think, over 100 gigs now on storage as well. And I've got like 5 websites running. And I barely touched the tip of the spear. And I'm still, the only reason I was that close on credits this month is I had an 8-core machine running for about 20 days. So that's the only reason I got that close down to, 10 bucks, was I forgot I had the 8-core machine running. The good thing about Windows Azure also, unlike some of the other ones, is if you hit your credit limit, it'll just turn them off. You don't start getting billed. So that's really important. But so depending on your MSDN levels, there's was 100 to 150 bucks per tier. So if you know what tier you're in, if not, you just log into the portal and it'll tell you how much you have to use. Almost everybody in here probably has one of those, and if not, Microsoft offers a $200 free credit, which I think is limited at 30 days, but it changes every day. And I can tell you, I was on the free Azure trial before, and they just keep giving it to you again and again and again. They don't actually ever turn you off because they want you to use it. So they're not at all stingy with it. That's what they said. I have the link on the deck that I'll distribute. The pricing is going to change constantly, but yeah, that's so. If you have like a full MSDN, but it's not the Visual Studio one, it's just it's $100 a month. The Pro is actually a lower SKU. I think it costs less. So MSDN is just like a program. It doesn't necessarily mean there's levels of MSDN. So I believe like that top one might be like the equivalent of what they used to have for TechNet, if that was like all the servers and operating systems. And it's going to constantly change. And don't quote the pricing here. Look at what the portal says. I'm just making you aware that you get 100 bucks or 150 bucks in some cases that you're probably not using any of. So if you find even one usage, whether it saves you money or not, hopefully that's beneficial to you. Has anybody used Amazon? Okay, some people. I don't like Amazon as much, and their pricing is extremely confusing compared to Azure. So like they have this really weird formula, and I don't know what it means. And it reads like Congress wrote the pricing policy. But basically, you get 1 year of T2 Micro, which is some random amount of CPU. That's kind of along the lines of like how Microsoft defines DTUs for their SQL Azure services. Nobody really knows what it means. But everybody who's used SQL Azure just laughed at that one. But again, you can get a free Amazon trial if you want to try out Amazon's portal and see like the differences. And both Microsoft and Amazon are in a race, and they're constantly adding new things and then matching each other. So there might be a service they offer, like say you're a developer and you want to use their NoSQL database. You can use their NoSQL database, whatever you want, That's actually one of my next steps is I'm going to put up a couple SQL databases for just personal sites and stuff like that. So, yep, Google has a cloud. So I think it's, what, 300 bucks, 200 bucks? So if you guys want to just try something, you get, pretty good trial there. And after your trial, you checked it out for 3 days, you still have, $300 in credit in 58 days. So just install the World Community Grid or something like that, You might as well not let it go to waste. Because if you're like me, you get all excited, you sign up, and then you get busy, and then it expires. So instead of letting things go to waste. Believe it or not, Hewlett-Packard hasn't gone out of business yet, and they still have a cloud. Sorry, I'm just very nice. Actually, HP is doing very well, but for technology terms, they were struggling a couple years ago. So, But you get a $300 credit, and their pricing, their overages is a little bit weird. You get $100 a month for 3 months, not $300. If you go over $100 for any month, you get billed, which I don't believe they make you enter a credit card, so I'm not really sure how they're going to do that. But so yeah, their cloud's called Helion, I believe. I wasn't even aware of this one until a conference a couple months ago where they gave me a really cool piece of swag that was like an adapter for everything at Cloud Dev, I believe. So, and then there's a lot of others. I've never really heard of these. I wouldn't host anything serious, but if you want to try, or if they have a trial that you like, or something you want to do, it's still a couple $100 more credits, and I'm sure there's a lot more to come. So, it's pretty easy to find cloud hosting. And that being said, this is kind of a fun topic to just happen to me. So selfishly, I'm here because I want. Does anybody have any ideas I missed? Some cool stuff that you think you maybe would want to do, or just ways you've thought of using the cloud that you haven't got around to? Yes? A Plank server? Plex. Okay. So what is Plex? It's a.
Like you're on Netflix of your own movies.
Oh, that's kind of cool. I actually was looking the other day at the Azure Media Is it Media Services or Streaming Services? So you could actually take your video and just CDN it out there. I mean, why not? And you have more privacy than putting it on YouTube. So, okay, Plex server. I'll have to add that to my deck. Any other ideas people have? No. Okay. Well, I rushed through that because I thought I was out of time, so I guess I'm done a little early, so you guys will get more of a break unless you have questions. Anybody have any questions? No questions? Okay.
So what I remembered, some stuff in Azure doesn't bill you for bandwidth in, but does out. Does the backup charge additional billing based on your data in and not out?
Honestly, because I'm using free credits, I hardly pay attention to billing at all. That's kind of a nice thing. Makes it more liberating. I believe it charges you per server. So each machine you have attached, and then it charges you per storage space consumed, which is dirt cheap. So it's $10 a month per server, I believe. I don't know what the discount is for MSDN. And then you charge, it's some trivial amount of money for the storage. I don't believe they charge you for bandwidth, but I could be wrong.
I'm quite sure Azure covers Azure's bandwidth charges for all bandwidth out and not in. That's applied to the service to go in, so that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that they might have priced that into their offering, though, because in this case, but I'm not sure. That's a good question, and I could look it up for you, or if you want, I can follow up with you later and get the answer, or if you can just look it up, whatever. That being said, it's extremely cheap. It's a lot cheaper because it's free. You're using free credits. So if it happens to actually be $80 in Monopoly money a year instead of $60 of real money, I'm still coming out ahead. Other questions? Okay. Thank you, everybody. So there are a lot of links in here because, again, this wasn't a session about how to set up a VPN server. If you go to this guy here, I tried to make the link as simple as possible for you. The slide deck's there. And then also, what I'm going to do is there's a GitHub repository of slides that I'll post these and share these because I want you to take the ideas. So, also, I have free swag for anybody who wants it. They look like business cards, but if you guys want my contact information, I've got some. Okay. And I think.